Hello everybody, and welcome to Crash Course World History.
I'm John.
And I'm Green.
And today we're talking about nationalism in the Soviet Union since 1989.
Alright, let's go to the intro. "1989 was known as the death of communism, as that was the year many of the communist regimes collapsed, including that of the Soviet Union. Many of the Soviet Union's satellites and territories gained independence and then created its own government. Most of these new regimes were created off the basis of nationalism. Nationalism is defined as a feeling that people have of being loyal to and proud of their country, often with the belief that it is better and more important than other countries, and a desire by a large group of people, such as people who share the same culture, history, language, etc., to form a separate and independent nation of their own. So as you can see, many countries felt such a dire sense of nationalism that they decided it was time to break free from the Soviet Union. Basically, nationalism amongst these smaller provisions meant the breakup of the Soviet Union and all the power that it possessed. Although the Soviets took control of Estonia, Western Europe deemed this annexation as illegal. The recognition of Estonia under the Soviets was never really acknowledged. Estonia, as a result, was able to finally return to independence, especially because the Soviet Union was losing a hold on its empire while it dealt with its internal problems. As the 1980s progressed, it became more and more obvious that the Soviet Union was coming to its end, and the country of Estonia started to push for independence and self-determination. In 1989, during the Spring Revolution, a human chain made up more than 2 million people were created that stretched across Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. All three countries had experienced Soviet occupation, and all three countries were interested in gaining independence. It was nationalism transcending its borders. Estonia formally declared its independence in August of 1991 and reconstructed itself to make it look more like it had before the 1940s and before Soviet occupation. The Soviet Union recognized Estonian independence, and Russian troops finally withdrew by 1994. In 2004, Estonia was able to join both NATO and the European Union. Finally, the country had freed itself of Soviet control.
Georgia also declared its independence in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
However, things didn't really go so well. Its first president was overthrown in a bloody coup, and Georgia became involved in a civil war. The leaders of the coup joined to create a triumvirate known as the State Council. The triumvirate was led by an Edward Shevardnadze, hope I pronounced that right, who was eventually elected president. The disputes started to arise between the two regions of Georgia, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. These two regions were given limited independence, and Georgia only ruled specific disputed lands within those two regions. Eventually, Shevardnadze, the president, was deposed after the Rose Revolution, and Saakashvili became the president of Georgia in 2004. After the Rose Revolution, Saakashvili launched reforms to strengthen Georgia politically and economically. However, these reforms were not so successful in South Ossetia. Georgia's relations with Russia began to crumble apart, especially with Georgian involvement in the Second Chechen War and with Russian support in Abkhazia and South Ossetia. In 2008, Georgian forces tried to deal with South Ossetia by bombing it, but the bombings injured and killed many Russians in a Russian peacekeepers base. Therefore, the Russians were angry, and the Russian Air Force began to launch airstrikes against Georgian forces located in South Ossetia. The Georgian Air Force tried to fight back, but they soon withdrew. Soon military operations by the Russians were halted in Georgia, and South Ossetia and Abkhazia became recognized as independent. However, Georgia continues to claim that although South Ossetia and Abkhazia are under Russian occupation, they are still part of Georgia.
After Mikhail Gorbachev became the leader of the Soviet Union, the pressing question arose: when would the political oppression of the Chechens stop? In 1989, for the first time, a Chechen was appointed to be the leader of Chechno-Ingushetia, and his name was Doku Zavgayev. However, Zavgayev became highly corrupt and was replaced by Zokhar Dudayev. In 1990, he was the elected head of all the National Congress of the Chechen people, which was the mouthpiece of Chechen opposition. On November 25, 1990, the First Chechen National Congress declared the rightful sovereignty of the Chechen Republic of Naxiko, and 2 days later, the Supreme Soviet agreed with this by declaring Chechno-Ingushietia's sovereignty and saying that it would negotiate with Russia on equal footing, making Chechnya on the level of a union republic. After this, every Chechen political party wanted sovereignty, and on August 21, 1991, government buildings were stormed by political groups. Then, after the fall of the Soviet Union on November 1, 1991, Dudayev issued the Decree of Chechen Independence. However, this was regarded as an expression of Chechen popular will, and on November 2nd, the Fifth Assembly of People's Deputies of RSFSR met and released a statement saying that the Chechen Supreme Government and President were not legitimate. From 1991 to 1994, tens to thousands of non-Chechens left the republic with fears. The Russian government refused to recognize Chechen independence and tried to take control of the Chechen people, but failed. However, Russian forces installed Kadziev as ruler during the First Chechen War, who was later replaced with Zavagayev. Chechen resistance was strong, though. In 1997, Aslan Maskhadov won the election as a moderate, with the plan to unite all of Chechen into an independent and secular state. This state would be aligned more with the West while keeping positive relations with Russia. However, after gaining power, Maskhadov was considered weak in his dealings with Russia, and he even appealed to Moscow for help with controlling the people, and so Russia continued to send money to rebuild the public. However, the country was still extremely poor and more than 40% lived as refugees. Maskhadov also survived assassination attempts as the public was increasingly displeased with him. In August 1999, some renegade Chechen and Arab commanders led a group of militants into Dagestan and fought Russian forces there for a week. Russia's Prime Minister Vladimir Putin viewed this as a violation of the Khasav-Yurt Accord, and so on October 1st, Russian troops entered Chechnya, and in 2002 a local government was formed by Russia-allied Chechens, headed by Ahmad Kadyrov. The two wars of Chechnya have left millions in poverty, up to 500,000 refugees, and most of the infrastructure of Chechnya destroyed.
Now let's move on to Lithuania. Lithuania, on March 11, 1990, was the first Soviet republic to declare its independence. This was due to Gorbachev's policies of Glasnost and Perestroika, which I like to call Glastroika. Glasnost promoted openness and transparency of the Soviet government to Western European countries, while Perestroika referred to the restructuring of Soviet political and economic systems to introduce market-like reforms. The Glastroika are what people say are the main reasons that the Soviet Union fell apart. I mean, because of the Glastroika, anti-communist parties like the Socialist in Lithuania were able to rise to power. The Socialist was a political party formed in the 1980s. It was originally formed by both communists and non-communists alike, and it was simply to embrace Gorbachev's policies of Glastroika. However, eventually, the Socialists moved to more nationalistic ideals, and they started to push for an independent Lithuania. After the Socialists won a landslide in elections, Lithuania decided to finally declare its independence. However, the Soviets didn't like this too much, and they decided they wouldn't sit still. They tried to instill an economic blockade, and later Soviet troops entered Lithuania, and many Lithuanian border guards died in what was known as the Medininkai massacre. This, however, did not hinder Lithuania from pushing towards independence. After the Soviet August coup, which is a coup d'etat in the Soviet Union in which people from the Soviet government tried to overthrow Gorbachev, Lithuania started to gain worldwide recognition. The last of the Soviet troops left in 1993, even before they departed from East Germany, and Lithuania eventually joined NATO and the UN. Yet again, we see the effectiveness of Gorbachev's Glastroika igniting nationalism and liberating yet another Soviet-ruled country. After the beginning of the Glastroika, people started independence movements in Riga. Latvia and other Baltic states were given greater autonomy. Nationalistic sentiment became evident when the old pre-war Latvian flag began to fly in favor of the Soviet-created one. Eventually, on May 4th, 1990, Latvia changed its official name from the Latvian Soviet Socialist Republic to the Republic of Latvia. However, Moscow ignored Latvia's declaration of independence and still considered it as a Soviet republic. Later, the Soviets tried to overthrow the Republic of Latvia. However, many Latvian citizens decided to push for an independent Latvia, but they were no longer willing to be subordinate to the Soviet Union. Finally, the Russian troops withdrew from Latvia in 1994, and the country was able to join NATO and the UN in 2004. However, in the creation of the Republic of Latvia, there was many problems with citizenship. Many non-ethnic Latvians were not granted Latvian citizenship despite being born in Latvia, and this included many former Soviet Union citizens and their children. And if you don't have citizenship, you can't vote. As a result, many Russian speakers oppose many of the language and citizenship laws now imposed in Latvia.
On to Pakistan. After the independence of Pakistan from the Soviet Union, in 1999 General Pervez Musharraf took over the government through a bloodless coup and assumed vast executive powers. He ruled Pakistan as head of state from 1999 to 2001, and he became president from 2001 to 2008. This was a period of extensive economic reform and Pakistan's involvement in the US-led war on terrorism. On November 15, 2007, Pakistan's National Assembly became the first to complete its 5-year term, and the new elections were called. The Pakistan People Party won the largest number of seats in 2008 elections, and Yusuf Raza Gilani was sworn in as Prime Minister. He resigned in August and was replaced by Asif Ali Zardari. There was a power shift in 2013 elections as the Pakistan Muslim League achieved a majority, and Nawaz Sharif became the Prime Minister. On to Uzbekistan. In August 1991, there was an attempted coup against the Gorbachev government, which became the catalyst for independence movements all throughout the Soviet Union. On August 31, 1991, the Supreme Soviet of Uzbekistan declared the republic independent. In December, an independence referendum was passed and a parliament was elected, with Karimov chosen as the first president. Karimov encouraged anti-Russian nationalist feelings, and about 80% of the ethnic Russians fled the country. Waves of militant attacks shook the country, and in 2007, Karimov was re-elected fraudulently, as his secret police rounded up opposition activists and put them in jail. 10-year Soviet occupation, which left around 1,500,000 Afghan citizens dead and about 6 million refugees, the Soviets finally withdrew in 1989. The Peshawar Accords guaranteed a peace and power-sharing agreement, which created the Islamic State of Afghanistan. An interim government was created, but there was not time for it to create working government departments and police units or even a system of justice. Saudi Arabia and Iran began to arm and direct Afghan militias. Iran tried to maximize Shia Hezbi Wada influence, while Saudi Arabia was trying to strengthen the Wahhabite Abdul Rasul Sayyaf and his faction. Kabul dissolved into chaos. Meanwhile, southern Afghanistan was ruled by Gul Agha Sherzai, and in 1994 the Taliban developed in Afghanistan and took power in 1994. In 1995, the interim government in Kabul defeated all the enemy forces, and Massoud tried to initiate a nationwide political process with the goal of national consolidation and democratic elections, and the Taliban were invited to join, but they declined. They started to shell Kabul in 1995, but were stopped by forces of the Islamic State government. They seized Kabul in 1996 and established the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. They issued laws stating that women could not work outside the home, attend school, or even leave their homes without a male relative with them. As they started to try to consolidate control of northern and western Afghanistan, the Taliban committed systematic massacres against civilians. From 1996 to 2001, the Al-Qaeda of Osama bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri became a state within the Taliban state. And in early 2001, Massoud issued an address to the European Parliament in Brussels asking for humanitarian help for the people of Afghanistan. However, 3 days before the 9/11 attacks, Massoud was assassinated. Operation Enduring Freedom was launched, in which teams of American and British Special Forces worked with commanders of the United Front against the Taliban. In December 2001, after the Taliban government was crushed and the new Afghan government under Karzai was enforced, the International Security Assistance Force was established by the UN Security Council to assist the Karzai administration and provide security for the Afghan people. Rebuilding of war-torn Afghanistan started in 2002, but by 2009, shadow governments of the Taliban had begun to form throughout the country. On January 26, 2010, a major conference in London brought together many countries to discuss peace with one another. Afghan President Karzai intends to reach out to Taliban leadership and, under the support of NATO, called on these leaders to talk about peace. He also announced the intention of creating a new peacemaking organization to be named the Council of Peace, Reconciliation, and Reintegration. In 2010, the Afghan Peace Jirga 2010 took place, and peace seemed possible. However, after the September 2011 death of bin Laden, many problems.
Where is Ukraine? Let me find that. Okay. So let's talk about Ukraine. So on July 16, 1990, Ukraine finally won independence after a series of rebellions and uprisings against the Soviet Union. Ukraine adopted a democratic regime, and Leonid Kravchuk was elected as Ukraine's first president. However, the legitimacy of Ukraine's democracy was challenged with the rigged election of President Viktor Yanukovych in 2004. The election was most obviously rigged as the Supreme Court of Ukraine later ruled, and many people protested against this. Yanukovych's opponent, Viktor Yushchenko, challenged results of the election and led the Orange Revolution, which allowed Yushchenko and Yulia Tymoshenko to come to power. And ever since then, Yushchenko and Tymoshenko have been at odds with Yanukovych, the two sides constantly trying to gain power over Ukraine. In fact, last year in 2013, Yanukovych created a crisis by shying away from agreements to join the European Union. He instead made closer ties with Russia, alarming many Ukrainian citizens. And very recently, President Putin of Russia has also threatened to annex the Crimean peninsula of Ukraine. People are constantly debating as to whether or not Ukraine and Crimea belong to Russia. People are starting to question where their nationalism lies, in an independent Ukraine in Western Europe or in a vastly large Russia. This is still an ongoing issue today, and as of yet, nothing has really been resolved except the end of Yanukovych's presidency. However, even though Yanukovych has left, he said in his speech that I am eager, ready to fight for the future of Ukraine. In Ukraine, power was taken by nationalists, fascist youngsters. I did not run away. I just moved from Kiev, and during my traveling, I was shot at from the automatic rifles. I think Ukraine should be as a single united country. I will be back in Ukraine as soon as there will be guarantees for my security. So hey guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I know you have a lot on your mind right now, but I want to remind you that these shirts are only 15 bucks. Pick them up at Kimber's Room anytime before the AP test. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you learned something, and yeah, thanks for watching.